So, little ones, the little mermaid has gone to the sea witch to ask the sea witch to give her legs so she can go to the prince. You come just in time, said the witch. After tomorrow at sunrise, I could not help you until another year had gone by. I will prepare a drink for you, which you must swim to the land tomorrow. Before the sun rises, seat yourself there and swallow it. Then your tail will part in two and shrink in and come in what the people of earth call beautiful legs. But it will hurt you. It will feel as if you've been cut with a sharp knife. All you will see, you will declare you to be the prettiest woman they've ever seen. You will keep your graceful walk. No dancer will be able to dance as you. But every step you take will be as if you are treading upon sharp blades. And it's as if your blood must flow. If you can bear this pain, I can help you. Yes, said the sea maid with a trembling voice. She thought of the prince and her immortal soul. But remember, said the witch, when you have once received the human form, you can never be a sea maid again. You can never return to the water, to your sister, your father's palace, if you do not win the prince's love, so that he forgets his father and mother for your sake and is attached to your heart and soul, and tells the priest to join your hands. On the first morning after he has married someone else, your heart will break and you will become like the foam on the water. I will do it, said the sea maid, but she had become as pale as death. But you must pay me too, said the witch, and it is not something small that I ask. You have the finest voice at the bottom of the sea. And if that's what you think, that's what you will enchant him with, think again. It is this voice you must give to me. That is the best thing you possess for my costly drink. I must give you my own blood in it, so the draught may be as sharp as a two-edged sword. But if you take away my voice, said the little sea maid, what will remain to me? Your beautiful form, replied the witch, your graceful walk, your eloquent eyes. Those are what you have to make you captivate his human heart. Well, have you lost your courage? Put out your little tongue, and I will cut it off in payment, and then you will have the strong drink. Let it be so, said the little sea maid. And the witch put on her pot to brew the drink. Cleanliness is a good thing, she said, and she cleaned out the pot with the snakes, which she tied into a big knot. Then she scratched herself and let her black blood drop into it. Every moment the witch threw something in the pot. It boiled with ugliest, strangest sights. And afterwards it sounded like a weeping crocodile. But at last the drink was ready, and it looked like water. There you have it, said the witch. She cut off the little sea maid's tongue, so now she was dumb and could neither sing nor speak. If the polyps should lay hold of you when you return through my forest, just put a single drop of this liquor upon them. But the little sea maid had no need to do this, as the polyps drew back in terror as they saw the shining liquor. As soon as she passed through the forest, through the moss and the rushing whirlpools, she could see her father's palace. The torches were extinguished in the great hall, and everyone was sleeping. She didn't dare go to them, because now she was dumb and she couldn't talk, and she was about to leave them forever. She felt as if her heart would burst with sorrow. She crept into the garden, took a flower from each of her sister's flower beds, blew 1,000 kisses towards the palace, and rose up to the dark blue sea. The sun had not yet risen when she saw the prince's castle and climbed up the marble staircase. The moon shone beautifully clear. The little sea maid drank the burning sharp drink, and it seemed as if a sword went through her body. She fell down in a swoon and lay as if she was dead. When the sun shone out over the sea, she woke up, felt a sharp pain. But just before her stood the handsome young prince. He fixed his coal black eyes upon her so she could cast down her own. Then she saw that a fishtail was gone, and she had the prettiest pair of white feet a little girl could have. But she had no clothes. So she covered herself with her hair. The prince asked who she was and how she had come to be there. She looked at him very sadly with her dark blue eyes, for she could not speak. Then he took her by the hand and led her into the castle. Every step she took, it was as the witch had told her, as if she was standing on needles and sharp knives, but she bore it gladly. At the prince's right hand she moved on, as light as a soap bubble, and he, like all the rest, was astonished at her graceful swaying movements. She now received splendid clothes of silk and satins, and in the castle she was the most beautiful of them all, but she was dumb. She could neither sing nor speak. Lovely slaves dressed in silk and gold stepped forward and sang before the prince and his royal parents. One sang more charmingly than all the rest. This prince smiled at her and clapped his hands. Then the sea maid became sad. She knew that she herself had sung far more sweetly, and thought, if only he knew that I had given away my voice to be with him. Now the slaves danced pretty, waving dances to the loveliest music. And then the sea maid lifted her beautiful white arms, stood on the tips of her toes, and glided over the floor as no one had yet danced. At each movement her beauty became more apparent, and her eyes spoke more directly to the heart than the songs of the slave. All were delighted, especially the young prince, who called her his little foundling. The prince said that she should always remain with him, and she received permission to sleep on a velvet cushion before his door. He had a page's dress made for her so that she might accompany him on horseback. She climbed with the prince up the high mountains, and although her delicate feet bled so that even the others could see it, she laughed at it herself and followed him until they saw the clouds sailing beneath him like flocks of little birds travelling to distant lands. At home in the prince's castle, when the others slept, she went on the broad marble steps. It cooled her burning feet to stand in the cold sea water, and then she thought of her dear ones in the deep. Once in the night time her sisters came arm in arm. Sadly they sang as they floated above the water, and she beckoned to them, and they recognized her, and told her how she grieved them all. Then they visited her every night, and once in the distance she saw her old grandmother, who had not been to the surface for many years, and the sea king with a crown amongst his head. They stretched out their hands towards her, but did not venture so near to land as the sisters. Day by day the prince grew more fond of her. He loved her as one loves a dear child, but it never came into his head to make her his wife, and yet she must become his wife, or she would have to become foam on the sea on his wedding morning to someone else. "Do you not love me best of them all?" said the little sea maid with her eyes. "Yes, you are dearest to me," said the prince. "You have the best heart. You are the most devoted, and you are like a young girl whom I once saw, but whom I shall certainly not find again. I was on board a ship which was wrecked, and the waves threw me ashore near a holy temple, where several young girls performed the service. The youngest of them found me by the shore and saved my life. I only saw her twice. She was the only one in the world I could love. But you chased her picture out of my mind, you was so like her. She belongs to the holy temple, and therefore my good fortune has sent you to me, and we will never part." "Oh, he does not know that I saved his life," the little sea maid. "I carried him over the sea to the wood where the temple stands. I sat there in the foam and looked as if anyone would come. I saw the beautiful girl who he loves more than me." And the sea maid sighed deeply because she could not cry. "The maiden belongs to the holy temple," he said, "and will never come out into the world. They will meet no more. I am with him. I see him every day. I will cherish him and love him and give up my life for him." But now, they said, the young prince was to marry, and the beautiful daughter of a neighbouring king was to be his wife, and that was why a beautiful ship was being prepared. The story was that the prince travelled to visit the land of the neighbouring king, but it was done that he might see the king's daughter. A great company was to go with him. The little sea maid shook her head and smiled. She knew the prince's thoughts far better than the others. "I must travel," he said to her. "I must see the beautiful princess. My parents desire it, but they do not compel me to bring her home as my bride. I cannot love her. She is not like the beautiful maid in the temple whom you resemble. If I were to choose my own bride, I would rather choose you, my dumb foundling with the speaking eyes." He kissed her red lips, played with her long hair, so she dreamed of happiness and an immortal soul. "You are not afraid of the sea, my dumb child," said he, when they stood on the superb ship which was to carry them to the neighbouring king. He told her of storm and calm, of strange fishes in the deep, of what the divers had seen, and she smiled at his tales, for she knew better than anyone what was at the bottom of the sea. In the moonlit night, when they were all asleep except the steersman who stood by the helm, she sat on the side of the ship gazing through the clear water. She thought she could see her father's palace. High on the battlement stood her old grandmother with a silver crown on her head, looking at the rushing tide up to the vessel's keel. Then her sisters came out on the water, looking mournfully at her, and wrung their white hands. She beckoned to them, smiled, and wished to tell them that she was happy and well. But a cabin boy approached her, and her sisters dived down, so he thought that the white objects he had seen were foam on the water surface. The next morning the ship sailed into the harbour of the neighbouring king's splendid city. All the bells sounded, and from the high towers trumpets were blown, and the soldiers stood with flying colours and flashing bayonets. Each day brought some festivity. There were balls and parties followed by one after the other, but the princess was not there. People said she was being educated in a holy temple far away, where she was learning every royal virtue. At last she arrived. The little sea maid was anxious to see the beauty of the princess, and was obliged to acknowledge it. A more lovely apparition she had never beheld. The princess's skin was pure and clear, and behind the long dark eyelashes smiled a pair of faithful dark blue eyes. You are the lady who saved me when I lay like a corpse upon the shore," said the prince, and he folded his blushing bride to his heart. "Oh, I too am happy," cried to the sea maid. "The best hope I could have hoped for is fulfilled. You will rejoice at my happiness, for you are the most devoted to me of them all." And the little sea maid kissed his hand, and it seemed to her as if her heart was already broken, for his wedding morning was to bring death to her and change her into the foam of the sea. All the church bells were ringing, and the heralds rode about the streets announcing the engagement. On every altar fragrant oil was burning. The priests swung their censers. The bride and groom laid hand in hand and received the bishop's blessing. The little sea maid was dressed in cloth of gold and held up the bride's train, but her ears heard nothing of the festive music. Her eye marked not the holy ceremony. She thought of the night of the death and all she had lost in the world. On the same evening the bride and groom went on board the ship. The cannon roared, the waves flagged, and in the midst of the ship there was a tent of gold and purple with the most beautiful cushions, and there the married pair were to sleep in the cool, still night. The sails swelled in the wind, and the ship glided smoothly over the sea. When it grew dark, coloured lamps were lighted, and the sailors danced on the deck. The little sea maid thought of the first time she had risen up out of the sea and beheld a similar scene of splendour and joy. She joined in with the whirling dance, and flitted on as a swallow flits away when he is pursued, and all shouted and admired her, for she danced prettily. Her delicate feet were cut as if with knives, but she did not feel it. Her heart was far more wounded painfully. She knew that this was the last evening which she should see him. Him for whom she had left her friends and her home, had given up her beautiful voice, and had suffered unheard of pains every day, while he was utterly unconscious of it all. In the last evening she should breathe the same air as him, behold the starry sky, the deep sea. She had no soul, and she could not win one. The prince kissed his beautiful bride, and she played with his raven hair, and hand in hand they went to rest in the tent. It became quiet on the ship, and only the helmsman stood at the helm, and the little sea maid lead her arms out towards the sea, towards the morning dawn. The first ray she knew would kill her. Then she saw her sisters rising out of the waves. They were pale like her. Their beautiful long hair no longer waved in the wind. It had been cut off. We have given it to the witch, so that she might bring you help, so that you may not die tonight. She has given us a knife. Here it is, look. Look how sharp. Before the sun rises, you must thrust it into the heart of the prince, and when the warm blood falls upon your feet, they will grow together again like a fishtail, and you will become a mermaid again, and come to us, and live your 300 years before you become dead like sea salt foam. Make haste. He or you must die before the sun rises. Our old grandmother mourns so that her white hair has fallen off, as ours did in the witch's scissors. Kill the prince and come back. Make haste. Do you see that red streak in the sky? In a few minutes the sun will rise and you must die. And they gave a mournful sigh and vanished beneath the waves. The sea maid drew back the purple curtain of the tent, saw the beautiful bride lying with her head on the prince's breast. She bent down and kissed his brow, and gazed up to the sky where the morning red was brighter and brighter. She looked at the sharp knife, and again fixed her eyes upon the prince, who in his sleep murmured his bride's name. She only was in his thoughts, and the knife trembled in the sea maid's hand. And then she flung it far away into the waves. They gleamed red where it fell, and it seemed as if drops of blood splurted up out of the water. Once more she looked at the half-extinguished eyes at the prince. She threw herself from the ship into the sea, and felt herself dissolving into foam. Now the sun rose up out of the sea. The rays fell mild and warm upon the cold sea foam, and the little mermaid felt nothing of death. She saw the bright sun over her head, and there was 100 glorious ethereal beings. She could see them through the white sails of the ship, the red clouds of the sky. Their speech was melody, but of a spiritual kind, that no human ear could hear it. There was no earthly eye could see them, and without wings they floated through the sky. The little sea maid found that she looked just like them, and was rising more and more out of the foam. "Where am I going?" she asked, and her voice sounded like them of the other people, so spiritual, no earthly music could comprehend it. "To the daughters of the air," the others replied. "A sea maid has no immortal soul, and she can never gain one except if she wins the love of a mortal. Her eternal existence depends upon the power of another. The daughters of the air likewise have no immortal soul, but they can make themselves one through good deeds. We fly to hot countries where the close pestilent air kills men. There we bring coolness. We disperse the fragrance of flowers through the air and spread refreshment and health. After we have striven for 300 years to accomplish all the good we can bring about, we receive an immortal soul. You, poor little sea maid, have striven your whole heart of the goal we pursue. You have suffered, you have endured, and you have by good works raised yourself to the world of spirits, and can gain an immortal soul after 300 years. At this little sea maid lifted her bright arms towards the sun, and for the first time she felt tears. On the ship there was life and noise. She saw the prince and his bride searching for her. Then they looked mournfully at the pearly foam, as if they knew she had thrown herself into the waves. Invisible, she kissed the forehead of the bride, smiled at the prince, and mounted with the other children of the air on a rosy cloud which floated through the ether. After 300 years we shall thus float into paradise, and we may get there even sooner, whispered one. Invisibly we float into the houses of men where children are, and every day when we find a good child that brings joy to its parents and deserves their love, our time is shortened. The child does not know when we fly into the room. When we smile with joy at the child's conduct, a year is taken off our 300. But when we see a naughty or wicked child, we shed tears of grief. For every tear is a day added to our time of trial. So there, little ones, is why you must always be good to your parents and listen to them.